Good morning and welcome to Friday morning. Yes. So just a couple of announcements. Thank you all for those of you who are here for being prompt and on time. We will keep to schedule. Three announcements. One is that, of course, the bookstore is open during our intermission break time, and we may have a little more time for that this morning, which we'll explain in a minute. We are advised by the native people here in Arizona to remind you to drink plenty of water. It may not seem that hot to you, but dehydration is a factor here, so keep drinking water. There's water in the back, of course, of this room, also water bottles that you can purchase for $1. So keep yourselves in good health. I would also add that this morning, for those of you who are schedule readers, we're going to have one of our presenters, Barbara Demalski, is not going to be with us. So we're going to do something else during that time period, which will be explained as it happens. Otherwise, the schedule will flow as you see it in your book. Anything else, Ann, we might want to announce? We're good. All right, excellent. So I will turn it over to Helena, who will introduce our morning's presenter.
Good morning, everyone. How is your time so far? Good. Woo! All right. Well, we want to be hearing a few yelps by the end of the day, let's put it that way. All right. Well, I have the honor of introducing our morning speaker, and it's wonderful that Donna Mitchell-Moniak, will be with us this morning to infuse the day, begin the day, which sets the field. The morning speakers are so important because they set the field for the day. Donna she's a wonderful, long, deep student of the ageless wisdom. She has a Native American background, takes people on journeys that brings us into that ethos, which is so crucial today, especially to draw from the wisdom of the peoples of this land. She's a teacher of the ageless wisdom, which is a wonderful combination. And she is a founder of a meditative retreat center called Spirit Fire in Layton, Massachusetts, which is holding retreats and meditation experiences and unfolding your own journey. So Donna will be talking about the 500 years of the externalization of the plan of God. So let us welcome Donna Mitchell-Moniak.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And yes, let's set the tone of the day. If we can take just a couple of seconds to go inside. And feel ourselves breathing. Feel our hearts beat. And realize that with every breath, we are breathing the life breath of every being on this planet, every plant, every insect, every cloud, every raindrop, and every heartbeat that has ever beaten on this planet now beats in each of us. Breathe deep. Breathe deep again and realize that with the simple breath, each of us is fully alive. And all that means. All that means. This morning, we'll start the day talking about the externalization. And the first thing we could ask ourselves is why? Why talk about it? And to me, there are many things that are bandied about in these esoteric circles that can sound very abstract. And I think it is the challenge and our joyful service to make them not abstract, to see them in our lives, to see them in the life of our everyday livingness, and in the life of this planet, of everyday livingness of this planet. So the externalization is a subject that, as a word phrase even, the externalization of the hierarchy and the externalization of the plan, what does that mean? People kind of roll that phrase off their lips like we all know what we're talking about. So this morning, that's where I'd like to start, is why even talk about it? Because to me, it's not abstract. It is present, ever present. It declares who and what we are as people, as individuals, as collectives, as cultures, as societies. The externalization determines the art, the philosophy, the religions, the inventions, the discoveries of any particular time in history. Because the externalization always is. There's always some part of divinity and divinity's heart breath that is becoming present, manifest, extant in the world. That's the externalization. So I want to begin there because I think it's very easy to see. And then we'll bring it to, the last 500, 600 years, and I'll say why that time frame in a few minutes. But to just even begin with, it actually isn't an abstract subject. It's our lives. The externalization is our lives. Secondly, the externalization has to do with the manifest expression of the divine plan of God. At least that's what we're told. That's what we read in the blue books and in Agni Yoga as well. So what do we mean by that? What does that mean? I think in order to define that, we need to define some terms. Simple terms, so that at least as I'm up here for the next 40 minutes, we all can kind of be on the same page with how I'm using a few terms. God. Let's start with that one. In occultism, you start big, right? Then you work down to the details. God. I'm a deist. I own that. I'm definitely a deist. And I find that an interesting thing because I also practice and teach the higher tantras and Vajrayana. And even though I wear my malas and I use them all the time, and I say on my, your emergency stuff at the hospitals, what religion do you want them to do as you're passing on? Mine says Buddhism, right? But I'm still a deist. And to me what that means, and in order for me to answer my own rhetorical question of what is God, to understand more fully the externalization of the plan of God. God is divine beingness itself. God is suchness, this delicious, delectable quality of dynamic life essence that is everywhere, all the time, pervasive, non-stopping, ever creative. And in that creation, sometimes things fall apart, are destroyed, are inbreathed, only to be outbreathed again. That to me is God. What is God's plan? I definitely believe there is a plan. And I believe that not because of the sixth ray that I do have in my personality, but I believe that because I think it's very easy to see God's plan expressing, externalizing, manifesting, demonstrating all the time. And that's not just to see the order, but it is to see the beauty that creates the order. It is to see and feel the sense of oneness that does pervade everything on this planet. It is to see and realize that when we watch the mist rise from a compost pile in the back of our yard, they were watching the change of Davic life from this manifest heap into being released into the air. And those Devas then become the raindrops that then fill the ocean. And that reminds me of the ocean of compassion, which is life. So to me, absolutely, there is a plan. And it is God's plan. Furthermore, and possibly less abstract, but possibly more so, to me the plan of God is love. Why? Because God is love. And if we can say nothing else about God, I would hope we can all say that. And how do I know that? Like the Tao Te Ching says, I look inside myself. And like Heidi said yesterday, I find lots of places where there's not love inside me. But I also find such a strong need to be that, to be love, to be God-like, like unto God. So the plan is love, because God is love. And the plan is light, because God is light. God is a consuming fire of love, but that consuming fire of love is illuminative, is effulgent, makes everything bright, makes bright our day, makes bright our smile and our eyes. So the plan of God is to bring love and light into everything that exists, for everything that does exist to express, manifest, sing out, dance the delight of light. And maybe that's why that word is what it is, delight. It's to dance the delight of light. Because if we are living love, we cannot help but be delighted, so enthralled, thrilled. And we all know that from the secret doctrine, the thrill she would speak of. So, that's the plan, at least by this one humble person's estimation. So then, simply the externalization, I think, is the externalization of light and love. And so as we look out to the world, we should be able to see that happening. And when we look for it, it's kind of like when you do an experiment and you rig the experiment so that you get the results you want. Well, I'm going to look at the world looking for light and love. And because that's the eyes with which I'm going to look into the world, that's what I'm going to see. But that's a nice thing to see. So I'll keep doing that. Now, why the last 500 years, since that's the title of this talk? The Tibetan tells us that in 1425, a pretty significant event happened in the council chambers of Shambhala. And that significant event is given to us a fair amount in Dina 2 when he's talking about the formulas, hints, and points of revelations. And simply, and I'm going to paraphrase it from a few different sources, and I hope I get it right, that in this decision, Shambhala and Sanatkumara, the Lord of the World, decided that humanity now was to become a really significant part of himself. And that in starting to make way for this direct impulse from Shambhala and the Lord of the World and the will of God, therefore, into the manifest expression of the mind of God, which humanity largely represents, that in that act, not only did we have the precursor of now what we've called the Shambhala impact and the various Shambhala impacts, but we also have this curious statement by the Tibetan that from that point forward, it was what happened in humanity that actually would, in some measure, determine what happens in Shambhala. That is a huge statement. That now, for the first time, probably since the closing of the doors in Atlantis, from the bottom up would be very significant to what happened at the most top level of spiritual realization and sacredization of this planet. So that's why I'm going to start with about 500 years ago, and now at this point it's almost 600 years ago, 1425. Let me just read a quick quote. Let me see if I've got it. I've got my timing right here. One of the tasks which I have undertaken, this is 270 Dina 2. One of the tasks which I have undertaken is to awaken the aspirants and disciples of the world to the new possibilities and to the new incoming potencies which can become available for use if they will pass on to a fuller grasp of the developments since 1425 AD. Much that I am giving shall in the future give anent, much that I am giving and shall in the future give anent initiation. Its methods, processes, and application will appear entirely new. The new age will bring in eventually a civilization and a culture which will be utterly different to anything hitherto known. I would remind you that all civilizations and cultures are externalizations, modified, qualified, and adapted to the racial and national needs of the potent, vibrating, and planned activity of the world initiates and disciples who constitute the hierarchy of the time. So we are told in that one sentence that basically all that we experience in our extant world of human living are part of the externalization process. But now let's get just a little more specific. I'm going to speak more or less in generalities and leave to everyone else their own investigation of history. And I'll just highlight a few points in history that I think do describe the externalization as it's been going on in the last 500, 600 years. If the plan of God, and that's what is being externalized is the plan, if the plan of God is a plan of love and light, then what would we look towards? I think it's most easy to see the light. The light is happening first through all forms of education. We know that once the Gutenberg press was, extant and being used in Europe, then education blossomed forward. In the 1400s, of course, we also have the Renaissance. And all the illumination that went with that, all the art went through a tremendous upliftment, and literally the light factor, the light quality of artwork changed. How shadow and three-dimensionality was starting to be depicted, largely started, of course, by Da Vinci, but light in art tremendously changed. The quality of glass changed in the 1400s, how glass was made and now could be more transparent, thus letting literally more light into every single dwelling place, but also with the imagery in stained glass windows, immediately was changed and made more luminescent. The light quality was more luminescent. In the same time frame, we had medicine and science starting to take a whole new direction. It was a direction into anatomy. It was a direction into looking into what the body is and how it functions. And so there was revelation. Where there is light, there is revelation. And what got revealed was that we are not just a set of four humors, but that there is in-depth, intricate anatomy inside us. This, of course, started the reductionist revolution as well. And we can say whatever we will about that, if that has served us or not, now at this point in human history. But to go from superstition to understanding some of the real workings of the physical body, and then that leading the way, of course, into the tremendous scientific discoveries, including hygiene, vaccinations, etc., etc. The tremendous leaps in medicine that have been made are astounding. And these are part of the externalization of the plan of God, of light and love. Why can we say that? Because first off, we all have been made healthier. It might not be so in this country. It's an interesting thing, you know, we're the sickest people in this country. We have the worst health in this country of almost any country in the world. But overall, we can look to the world and we can see that people overall live longer lives. They do live more quality lives. They are not tied to the fear of death. Part of the externalization of the hierarchy and the externalization of the plan of God is to come to understand our own immortality. That is not just a belief. That in fact we are souls, we are divine light, we are divine presence on this planet. In that respect, then, we are immortal. And to have just our physical plane longevity, our lifespan, expanded, means that we have the opportunity to experience more and more the fullness of life. And if we do that, if we stop, if we take a breath, if we breathe, and feel what that breath is, we can no longer be afraid of death. Our life breath has just told us, right in that moment, that there is no death, there is only life. Because I'm breathing the same life breath that countless beings have breathed, and it just recirculates over and over again. So we have medicine. We have art was changed. We have medicine was starting to be changed. Philosophy started to change. There was this burgeoning forth from about 1500 on to the late 1700s of tremendous philosophers. And you could certainly extend it even into the 1800s. Philosophers mostly coming forth out of Europe. Again, an illumination of the mind. The externalization is about illumination. How can we bring light into this world? What are the ways in which light is expressing in this world? What are the ways in which we are living? Why is there democracy, as an example? Granted, we don't have a good system of it here. We don't, you know. We should be listening to our own wisdom. However, you know, that democracy exists as a philosophical system so that it can then little by little be made into a proper political system. We still don't get the philosophy yet, you see. That's why here in America we don't have the politics right. Because we haven't taken in the basic illuminative statements, the words of power of all men are created equal. That all people on this planet have the freedom of life, liberty, and the pursuit of goodness is what I would say. And I think that's what they were trying to say. So because we don't have that philosophy down yet, which again, philosophy being part of the externalization of the plan of God, this illuminating factor of the heart-mind. If philosophy does nothing else, it brings heart-mind together. Unifies them into a livingness. Because a philosophy cannot be just, philosophy is not a belief, that's why we have a different word for it. Philosophy is a love of life and must be translated into our livingness. So this too, to me, is evidence of the externalization. The amount of philosophers and philosophies that just have flowered over the last 500, 600 years. We also have a couple of things that are very, not just important, but can be spiritually read on multiple levels. I'll come back to science for just a minute. The many discoveries that happen and have happened over the last 500, 600 years are tremendous. Things from as simple as Harvey determining our entire circulatory system, and I think that was in the 1500s, to botany being put down and codified by Linnaeus, to the discoveries of the New World. So we have these kind of micro, go inside the physical body, try and figure out how the physical body works, to even the physical body of the plants and of the animals, to the discovery of this new world. And if if this change happened in 1425 or thereabouts, as we are told by the Tibetan, then within 75 years, less than 75 years, Columbus was sailing across the ocean blue. And with that movement across the Atlantic, how many things changed? First off, in fact, the world became round. Up until then, everyone could still question it. That's huge. And it's huge on a metaphysical and esoteric level as it is on the physical plane exploration level. It's huge in that finally the second ray round quality of the soul of this planet could start to be expressed in this planet. With the roundness of the globe started to be the rounding out of humanity. The globalization of this planet. We could no longer, from that point forward, be only fiefdoms. We would become countries fighting each other. But we also begin with that one crossing of the Atlantic. That was the start of globalization. We then could come to know we have neighbors, and that this world, if you go around it, it comes around again. And interestingly, of course, we started to see karma play out in our own world history play out. We've heard it said, but I think you don't have to be an esotericist to figure it out. You know, that the Roman Empire became the British Empire, but now look at America. We're the Romans back again. So again, that in that way, the roundness of karma coming around, going around. The other thing with the crossing of the Atlantic is that so released the spirit of exploration and discovery in humanity itself, that we now sit in this room with 100 people and we are explorers. That one trip of exploration, we can say what we want about where he thought he was going and that it might have been a big mistake. But how many times have we ventured forth in our own spiritual path and thought we were going one place or was going to end up in a particular understanding, and we got something else that was far greater? Likewise, with Columbus's trip across the Atlantic, the exploration of who we are as a human kingdom, the exploration of humanity's relationship to everything on this planet, finally could open up. And from that point forward, from the late 1400s, early 1500s, we now could enter into an exploration of ourselves. This is profound. And we sit here because of that. Humanity as a whole could enter into an exploration of itself. It began to be released from the monarchy and the absolute dualistic model that had been extant on this planet. With the rounding out of the globe, we started to become rounded out. Instead of being polar, it's as if we moved from Gemini relationship with one another as kind of familial, I'm familiar with you, to then into Libra, starting to round it out, those who know the glyph, to now Aquarius, where we all move in synchronous motion with each other, up together, down together, up together, down together. But we also took this straight up and down glyph of Gemini that is rather, for all its mutability as a sign, the glyph is rather static. To, okay, let's figure this out, let's work together. The externalization of the hierarchy and the externalization of the plan of God, if we can say nothing else, It is to learn how to explore love. What is love? What is loving living? Obviously, we haven't answered the question fully, because we don't have to look to the wars in the world to answer that with the negative answer. All we have to do is look inside ourselves. If we're still warring with ourselves, if we still haven't found the deepest place inside ourselves that is totally, fully illumined, then we're still in our own exploration and discovery. But as we discover more as human beings, going back to that very interesting point that the Tibetan made about from 1425 onward, the bottom, humanity, would absolutely affect what goes on in Shambhala. It is our exploration of ourselves, it is our exploration of our spiritual beingness that actually affects, does not make, but affects the spiritual beingness of the Lord of the world. That's a profound thing to meditate on. That in fact, the mouse does affect the lion. The mouse does pull the thorn out of the lion's paw. How much time do I have, Sheldon?
Less than 20.
So again, I think that we can look out to the world, and we can look out to the world for the externalization. I think that we can certainly see right now there are things afoot. You know, we have various saints and sages in the world today. We can all ponder and put our own glasses and slants on masters and initiates and disciples and all those kinds of terms. I look out to the world and I see the Dalai Lama and I see Amici and I see some very profound, great scientists, and I say, wow, it's happening. It's happening. There are masters who have their feet on this planet right now. There are high initiates who have their feet in the world work of this world. So, yes, as Michael said, looking at the astrology and the time cycles, it might be that we have a long way to go before we even in a major wave of this, you see. But it's here, it's now. We are here, we are now. We are the externalization. And we know that. I think we do know that. I think we know that as every single human being opens their heart and then breathes that openness, that the externalization just happened more. I like to think of it like popcorn, you know, as people are popping like popcorn, popping open into the whiteness of themselves, of the lightness of their being. And of course, popcorn is such a light thing, right? We lighten the world. We change the density of our own lives, the density of our thought process, the density of the crystallization around our hearts. That's the externalization. And that's possible because not only have we incarnated again through all these processes of discovery and exploration, but we have been illumined, and every day we illumine more and more. And because our neighbor has found something that works for them and they tell it to us, then we tell it to another person. That's that roundness that has happened once Christopher Columbus crossed the ocean blue. I'd like to add one more thought here as to why now. Is it just because the Tibetan put out these blue books? So everybody who's read the blue books talks, you know, the externalization. So is it just because these books now exist? and have existed since, since the middle of the last century. Yeah, that's a good reason, but it doesn't say the why of it. The Tibetan tells us that in 1925, hierarchy, the majority of hierarchy, moved on to the Buddhic plane. And whatever that means to every person living in this, in this world, I have a thought on what that might mean. And I think it has to do with the externalization and why now? Why yes, keeping in mind the astrological cycles and the ray cycles that cycle in and out, yes. But also, why now? With hierarchy moving on to the Buddhic plane, it made me think of I put into my mind the last law of the soul. There are 7 laws of the soul, and the last law of the law is the law of the lower 4. So without going into a great explanation of that law, simply there are a few different ways to approach that law or to try to meditate with that law. And one is from the perspective of initiation, that we all, that in order for an initiation to happen, we have to stand upon 4/7 of the plane that's related to the initiation. So if we were taking the first initiation, which opens the heart, for the first time we stand in front of the Christ, the great initiator, the Christ. In order to do that, we would have to have an understanding and this is an opinion, be a divine embodiment of what it is to interact with all that physical plane living is. And to be able to do that with 4/7 accuracy, if we will. And so we take that initiation, all initiations are taken on the 5th subplane, counting from the bottom up, so the 3rd subplane from the top down. That's why the lower 4 have to be extant within your consciousness in a way of well-doing. You have to be able to do it well. So that's one approach with that law. But as I thought about this quote from the Tibetan about 1925 and hierarchy moving on to the Buddhic plane, or at least the majority of it, it made me think of course, the Buddhic plane is the 4th plane, which we all know. And the lower 4 would be Buddhi, Manas, astrality, and the physical etheric plane. So what does that mean as far as the externalization? Does it mean anything towards the externalization? And I would suggest yes. That with hierarchy moving on to the Buddhic plane, it put a direct relation by resonance and numerically with humanity, which is governed by the 4th ray, and this 4th plane, which is governed by the 4th ray. So immediately, and for the first time in history on this planet, at least according to the Tibetan, there is a direct relationship between the personality of the human kingdom and the Buddhic plane, the plane of at-one-ment. This is not a small statement unto itself. For the first time in the history on this planet, the human kingdom could actually understand and strive towards and accomplish at-one-ment. As a kingdom. Not just as individuals. So in going back to, I don't remember who it was who was standing up here, but who asked the rhetorical question, why is the Christ, so far ahead of everyone else? I think it was Helena. Because it wasn't possible before. Why is it that the Christ would say, greater things than I shall you do? Because of this one thing, which is huge in the externalization of the hierarchy and the plan of God, with the lifting up of hierarchy onto a whole new plane of experience, and externalizing hierarchy onto that plane, because to lift it up is also to externalize it onto it, to manifestly express hierarchy onto another plane, means that that plane now becomes available to all of humanity. Why? Because it is humanity that comprises hierarchy now. It's all made of human beings. Add to that the Buddhic plane is the heart. It's the plane of the heart. So this means that the heart of the Logos, which is exemplified by the Christ, the office of the Christ as the heart of hierarchy, but the heart of the Logos as a plane of existence. Let's kind of reframe, rephrase, move the phrases around how we use our esoteric knowledge. The Buddhic plane is the plane of the heart of the Logos. So it's not just that Christ is the heart of the Logos. It's not just that hierarchy is the heart of the Logos. And why is hierarchy the heart of the Logos? It might have been that in some manifest expression before it moved up onto the Buddhic plane, but now it literally is that. So, now this means heart. Heartness is available to everything that exists and is a manifest expression of God's beingness in a way never possible before. Heartness. That's another, I just want to stop, drop, and meditate right there. So, if heart is now available in a way never before on this planet, this is why first initiation, people are popping like popcorn. Because the heart of God, the heart that is the Christ, the initiator for those first two initiations, the relationship of the Buddhic plane to humanity as a now, there's this governing energy of Buddhic energy. Buddhic energy is fourth ray energy. So it's not just that fourth ray is harmony through conflict, which of course we all know it is, but it rules and governs, and the Buddhic plane is the manifest expression of that energy. The Buddhic plane is the manifest expression of the energy of harmony through conflict. That energy now is available to the human kingdom in a way it never has been available before. So simply, this is why the externalization can happen now, in addition to the astrology, in addition to the rayology. It's because the Logos has determined in 1425, humanity is ready to be at one. And if humanity is at one, then humanity expresses the oneness that I am, that Logos is. Humanity now expresses the fullness of the suchness that God is. No longer a house divided, no longer living a separatist orientation. So we all know we're a long way from that. We know it because, like the Tao says, I look inside myself. But we also can take refuge. Take refuge in these wonderful, the realnesses of these things, the realnesses of the at-oneing that we live in our lives, the at-oneing that we discover within one another. As Heidi said, I, you. I, you. The exploration that is happening in our planet, on our planet, that we are exploring finally how to live together. That we are exploring how we affect everything. And that everything affects us. That's the Buddhic at-oneing. No longer polarities, no longer dichotomies. This is why when I end up talking about the divine feminine often, and I want to find a different term, because automatically the term polarizes. So I've just started to talk about universality. So I think I'm done. So if there's any thoughts, comments, or questions for a couple of minutes. Sharon's got the mic.
Somebody's got to start, right?
Somebody's got to break the ice.
Yeah, I guess so. I would just say, Donna, thank you. This is a very, very insightful talk. Michael gave a talk for those of you who were here on why now from these huge cycles. But bringing it right down to what's happened in history in the last 500 years is really a service for us. So I want to thank you. This is just terrific, really. But a question or a comment. Sorry, I mean, what the heck? I got the mic, right? That insight about roundedness and what it means for us since 25 to come more into the heart and become one planet, one people, and what's happened with the view of the Earth from the moon. All of these things are telling us, isn't it, that this is the time to come together, to unify, to build on our strengths and help each other become souls. So I think it's just wonderful what you're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, as we, of course, most of us are very familiar with the teachings on the Antakarana, and we're given these various techniques which tend to be a vertical model technique. And when we kind of in our own insight realize that the vertical is actually this, it's a spherical, it's almost elliptical if we want, but there's that roundness again that, as you were speaking, I had this flash in my mind of, yes, the view of from the moon to the Earth, but also, how all the maps were just these flat maps, and then all of a sudden we got globes. We got globes. How did I don't know. It was like one day I just realized globes did not exist until after Columbus's trip. And what that meant, what that means psychologically to be dealing as a flat plane reality, and what it means to look at the roundness of everything. It's a profound thing. Simple and profound.
Donna mentioned two great saints whose work here is compassion, Amachi and the Dalai Lama. She's considered to be the mother of compassion, and he the bodhisattva of compassion. So I think it's interesting that Donna brought their names up. And synchronistically, the master's chair covering there on the stage with the Buddhist symbols is from the Kali Chakra initiation and has been blessed by the Dalai Lama. And the altar cloth in indigo and blue, the colors of the second ray, with the gold, is one of Amachi's saris that she has worn and blessed. So just wanted people here to be aware that even invisibly the masters are with us at the conference.
Yes. Thank you, Susan.
I'd just like to share another insight about the heart and what you were speaking about in relation to the globe and the roundness, because in fact what that also does is change our perception of divinity from a place to a flow. Yes. Because you can't have a place on a globe that's fixed, because everything is moving. It's moving in one way, and it's not actually moving in a singular directional way either. It's not like I'm here and I have a goal there, and when I'm there, I'm there. It's when I get there, I'll discover that there's more to keep going. And it's so you actually step into a complete other way of being, which is into a stream of life, which has also been mentioned here. We're in a flow, we're in a movement. It's not I'm here and I'm seeking that light of that plane or of that consciousness. I'm seeking to be in the flow of that existence. And I think what you've expressed really helps to clarify that's a rather major shift also in our consciousness and our need to understand flow rather than place.
And I think it's one of the issues, if you will, within America, is that America, because it has a six-ray personality, America is very goal-oriented. very, and single-minded, goal-oriented. So as an example, it's spending who knows how many billions of dollars still with quests in space. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but we have the issues on this planet that require the same amount of money. And so if we were to turn our gaze here as a nation instead of up there, which is part of its escapist mentality as well, you see, of the sixth ray, just what a huge shift that would be. Just that. And that's, as you say, instead of one goal after another, what about right here? What about right here? It's the flow of the heart. It is. The heart is, it's an interesting shape. It really is shaped like that, which is a very rounded kind of a shape, actually. Well, thank you all. Yeah?
Is there one more question? That's okay.
Thank you all.
That's great. And once again, thank you, Donna. That really, as I say, just kind of fills out some things that a lot of us probably haven't thought about in the same ways. So thank you. Okay, we're going to take like a 5-minute stand-up break, a 5-minute stand-up break, a 5-minute stand-up